Hello, my name is Lewis and welcome to Gathering the Magic. Today we're looking at a budget $35 Braids Arisen Nightmare deck tech. From Dominaria United, this nightmare says at the beginning of your end step you may sack an artifact creature, enchantment land or planeswalker. If you do, each opponent may sack a permanent that shares a type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses a life and you draw a card. This deck is all about getting out plenty of sackable end step fodder, as well as making other ways for our opponents to sack even more, to drain from Braids, draw us cards, and outvalue our way to the victory royale. Now, let's get straight into the budget deck. As always, we're starting off this budget brew with all of that ramp. First up, we have Ornithopter of Paradise to add 1 mana of any colour, and Ornithopter, which although isn't ramp, we just had to put them both together. They can both also be cheap sackable fodder to Braids too. We have Sad Robot Solemn Simulacrum to ETB, searching us out a basic land straight onto the field tapped. When it dies, you draw a card. And classic black staple Dark Ritual to add 3 swamp to your mana pool. There's Multi-Kicking Everflowing Chalice that ETBs with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked, and you can add a colourless for each charge counter on the chalice. And Mycosynth Wellspring that when ETBs always put into a graveyard, you may search your library for a basic land, putting it into your hand. So easy to sack with Braids, ramp and then get your opponents sacking their artifacts. We have Prize Statue that creates as a treasure token whenever it ETBs or hits the graveyard, and Black Market that says whenever a creature dies, put a charge counter on it. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, add a swamp for each charge counter on Black Market. We have some staples in Arcane Signet to add black, and Charcoal Diamond that does exactly the same, this time ETBing tapped. For some more 2-drop ramp we have Felwar Stone, and Mind Stone to add colourless or have as that secondary sack option to draw a card. There's Wayfarer's Bauble that can sack to search a library for a basic land, putting it onto the field tapped. And finally, we have Soul Ring, because Soul Ring. Before we get onto those cold-hearted killers, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe down below for all things MTG. Subscribing is completely free to do and it helps our channel grow and grow. And if you're buying cards, then look no further than Card Market. And when signing up, make sure to use our referral code gathering-the-magic to help the channel that little bit more. Now we're looking at all of those extra ways to clean up our opponent's board. First is Demon's Disciple and Merciless Executioner that both ETB, making each player sack a creature or a planeswalker in Demon Disciple's case. We have Plague Crafter, which is the same as Demon's Disciple, but each player who can't discards a card. And Spine of Ishsar, the ETB's destroying target permanent. When it is put into a graveyard from the field, return it to its owner's hand. These sort of cards are perfect with Braids. Play it, remove some of your opponent's board, sack its Braids and have the chance to play it again and again. We have Defile that gives target creature -1/-1 until end of turn for each swamp you control, and Tragic Slip for the chance to give target creature -13/-13 until end of turn if a creature died this turn. For some huge one-sided board wipes, we have In Garruk's Wake and Plague Wind to destroy all creatures you don't control. They can't be regenerated. There is another black staple in Feed the Swarm to destroy target creature or enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to the permanent's mana value. And Sat's Will to make each opponent sack a creature they control with the greatest power. Or exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards, creating X-0-1 Thrall tokens where X is the greatest power among creature cards exiled this way. You can choose both options if you control your commander. We've got Smallpox to make each player lose 1 life, discard a card, sack a creature, then sack a land. And Planeswalker, Liliana, Walker of the Dead, to most importantly +1 to make each player discard a card, and those who can't loses 3 life. And the -3 to give target creature -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in your graveyard. For the final 3 there's Woe Strider, the ETB's creating a Goat token with that added ability for some free creature sack outlet, allowing you to scry 1. And Go for the Throat to destroy target non-artifact creature. Rounding up with Saga, Braids, A Frightful Return, Part 1 allows you to sack a creature, making each opponent discard a card. Part 2 gives you some creature graveyard recursion, and Part 3 says target opponent may sack a non-land, non-token permanent. If they don't, they lose 2 life and you draw a card. If we have all of these ways to clear our opponent's board and hand, when it comes to using Braids' end step trigger, they're hopefully unable to sack anything and we're draining all of their life and drawing a card. Next on up, we're looking at all of those cards that will gain from various death and destruction. First we have Blood Artist and Falconwrath Noble that both say when it or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. There's Zulaport Cutthroat, this is whenever it or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. an agent of the Iron Throne that gives Braids whenever an artifact or creature you control is put into the graveyard from the field, each opponent loses 1 life. We have Carrier Thrall that when dies creates a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion token that can be sacrificed for a colourless mana, an Elvish Doomsayer that when dies each opponent discards a card. The whole aim of the game in this deck is to constantly beat down our opponent's board, so the more cards we have to capitalise on removal the better. There's Evil Gissa Glorious Protector that says if a creature an opponent controls dies, exile it instead. At the beginning of your upkeep, put all cards exiled by Gissa onto the field under your control, and they gain Decayed. A Morbid Opportunist that says whenever 1 or more creatures die, draw a card, triggering only once per turn. There's Shambling Ghast that when dies, either give target creature an opponent controls -1/-1 until end of turn, or create a treasure token. And Sleeper's Guile to give enchanted creature fear, and when creature is put into a graveyard from play, return Sleeper's Guile to your hand. For the final 4 we have Mere Retriever that when dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand, and Scrap Trawler that says when it or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the field, return target artifact card from your graveyard with lesser mana value. Rounding off with some Braids Death Fodder in Phyrexian Walker and Reassembling Skeleton that we can pay to get out of our graveyard and back onto the field. Before we finish on up with those lands, we're looking at the best of the rest in this budget brew. First up is Demonic Law and Treacherous Blessing. They're both ETB, drawing us 3 cards. Demonic Law loses us 2 life on our end step for each card in our hand, and Treacherous Blessing says when you cast a spell, you lose a life, sacking it when it becomes the target of a spell or ability. There's Read the Bones and Sign in Blood to draw 2 cards, losing 2 life, with Read the Bones also getting in some spicy Scry 2 action first. There's Ecor Wellspring that when ETBs or is put into a graveyard, draw a card. And Nimble Right Schematic that when ETBs or is put into a graveyard, create a 1/1 construct artifact creature token. For some protection, there's Fake Your Own Death to give target creature +2/+0 until end of turn, and when this creature dies, return it to the field tapped under its owner's control, and you create a treasure token. And Malakir Rebirth, the DFC land that does the same as Fake Your Own Death, except you lose 2 life. We have more of the same in Undying Malice, this time returning with a +1/+1 counter, and classic staple Swiftfoot Boots to give a quick creature hexproof and haste. For some more sackable fodder, there's Jadar. This is at the beginning of your end step. If you control no creatures with Decayed, create a 2/2 zombie token with Decayed. And Servo Schematic that when ETBs or is put into a graveyard from the field, create a 1/1 servo creature token. There's Burglar Rat and Elderfang Disciple that when ETBs, each opponent discards a card. For a third and final ETB discarder, we have Virus Beetle. And Siphon Mind that says each other player discards a card. You draw a card for each card discarded this way. And for some final recursion, we have Persistent Specimen to pay and return it from the graveyard to the field. And Unearth to return target creature with mana value 3 or less from the graveyard to the field, with that secondary cycling option. For our final 2 we have Command the Dreadhorde to choose any number of target creatures and or planeswalker cards in graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage equal to the total mana value of those cards, putting them onto the field under your control. And Necrogoyf that's power and toughness are equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player draws a card. So now to round off this budget brew, we're looking at all of those lands. Starting with the basics here, we have 35 Swamp. This is a mono-coloured deck after all. Finally, we've thrown in a Drownyard Temple that we can pay to return from the graveyard to the field tapped. Braids would love to sack that. Braids is a really interesting and viable commander from Dominaria United, and it's really good to finally see an alternative to the previous Braids that was banned many years ago. And as is the theme in this set, that alternate art was really something too. You love to see it. There we have it, that is the $35 budget Braids deck tech. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe down below for all things MTG. Check out our link tree in the description box below for all of our social media and affiliate links. For now though, I'm all tapped out, so I'll see you in the next video.